Good morning and welcome back to Spids YouTube. It's another week of the ANZ League and thus another week of playing some games. I'm bringing Kakarombo combo, as I have been for the last couple of times, for the Corp game, and then there'll be a running game after this. But Kakarombo combo has not really had any change. Last time I was very technically on this version, but I already knew that I wanted to be on this version for the future game. So this is the version that we're on for this game against my opponent. And I'm not going to re-explain Kakarombo combo. I feel like I've played Kakarombo combo enough and explained it enough that if you wanted to see an explanation, you should just see the style of the previous video where I go over like the history of it. But this is the version. I do know what changes I want to make for the next version. Primarily, I think I'm going -1 Adrian, +1 Anoetic, +1 Vampy, probably at the cost of a teeny, and then I'm debating between -1 Hollow, +1 Corpo, and changing the Boomy for a Drafter. But I'm not entirely certain on the like Hollow Man Boomy stuff, because Hollow Man does have some good use, but I've been thinking more about Drafter as an option, and Corporate Hospo I really like. But I don't need to go over the list too much. Let's just go over the game. Boom. So I'm fighting against Gizmo Luke on Asa. Asa says the first time each turn you suffer core damage, you may draw 1 card and sabotage 2. So I've fought enough Asa decks to sort of know generally what they're on. They're going to be on some copies of Running Heart, which gives them a bunch of clicks for taking some damage. They're going to be on some copies of Marrow. They're going to be on some copies of like Vegement, or however you pronounce that, and stuff like that. So I sort of have an idea. Part of what I know is that they are going to be sabotaging, I don't know, maybe 4 through 8 in the game, which means I do want to make sure that I have some spin doctors around that I'm not just using to cycle my agendas, but are using specifically to cycle the agendas that they're going to be sabotaging from me. But that's the only real worry I have. I'm not too concerned about Asa. They can just sort of randomly win the game with like the card that lets them see 4 cards from R&D, which is maybe worrisome. Like, that's just a random win con they might have. But I'm not too worried about Asa. That's not like a problematic. There's nothing worrisome, greatly worrisome to me about Asa. Looking at this hand, I think this is mulligan. I think this is like a pretty bad hand. I think cohort +1 ice is fine, but in practice, what this means is either you're going to put ice cohort in like a new remote, and then okay, they get to run HQ and R&D, possibly snipe this Fuji, which would be a 1 in 5 if we click to draw, like mandatory draw, click to draw. But more realistically, it might be like a 1 in 4 if they end up trashing an Adrian or a Hollow and run again or something, right? And that's just like, that's not great. And they can run R&D for free, and I don't love giving them just free random R&D runs, especially if they're going to have that for a couple of turns in a row. Another way to see this hand is that I've got 2 cards that aren't actually integral to my game plan. They're just cute side options. They're just sort of like side grades. And so if you're ignoring these cards, why would you have a mulligan with just 3 cards in it? One of them is like one of their win cons too. So I don't think this is a good enough hand. So this is like a really easy mulligan. And we mulligan into a much better hand. We've got 2 ice, which means I can do my very favorite ice play. Hollow Man is easy to trash early with a cohort or something if I draw it, and a Spin Doctor is nice to have early draws and access to things I might want. So I like this hand. I think this hand's a lot better. What I wish this hand had was maybe like a Hansai, that's an M, a Hansai review or a hedge, not all of that. Hansai review or a, why am I doing it with, one last try. Hansai review or a hedge fund, which I kept trying to write Sure Gamble like about 6 times. I think these are the only things that would be like super ideal, followed by maybe like a tattoo plus cohort, so that on the turn after I could go here and here. But other than that, like the fact that I've got 2 ice means I feel pretty safe, and that's a good feeling. So we start the game and we draw a petty cash, which is great. This means we can actually afford to res these pieces of ice, which is somewhat relevant, right? Typically, resing ice is better than not being able to res ice, but they don't know if their ice is resable. I assume Asa on turn 1 is more likely to be running than just install, like you might see a Shaper do, right? A Shaper might easily do like Knick-Knack, Coalescence, something. But I assume Asa would at least run on turn 1. So being able to petty cash means I can easily petty cash install whatever server they run, I get to rest the thing in front of. Question is, which ice do you put in front of what? I think this is something that I just have my own opinions on what I think is right, but it's not something that I know like universal logic on. But personally speaking, I'm fine not having end the run ice on R&D, because R&D, I don't have a great... I can't, like... There'll almost certainly be agendas in R&D. It's unlikely for there not to be agendas in R&D. But I can't control that as much, while I can, like, greater control if there's agendas in HQ, which means that I can be more satisfied in deciding whether I want to actually end the run with something like Boto. And that if I do need to end the run, I can feel comfortable that I can, right? Like, if my hand is like 4 engenders and something, I don't know, I'd want to make sure that the end the run subroutine is here rather than here, because at least this... How do I put this? How do I put this in a way that actually articulates exactly what I want? I think what I want to say is something like, R&D will always have the possibility of missing, so I'm okay if there are not end the runs in front of it, while HQ, you can frequently find yourself in situations where you want all those cards. In addition, like, the value of running HQ for the runner is that if there's not an agenda in there, like, obviously the value is that there might be an agenda and they could steal it and that's how they win the game, but if it's not an agenda and it's something they can trash, that costs me a click, because I have to draw that. But if they run R&D, it doesn't cost me a click, because I don't have to draw that card, right? So being able to prevent them from doing that means that they are getting, out of their 2 choices of running, they're going to get more value if they run HQ. Generally, if they're viewing running as a way to tax me. Now, if they're viewing running as a way to tax my game plan rather than, like, my actions, or if they're viewing running as a way to simply score agendas, then there might be more of a reason to run R&D based on whatever circumstantially has happened throughout the game. But in my mind, that means I much prefer having the end the runs on R&D. At the very least with this deck, where I store agendas in my hand quite frequently. There are other decks where you don't store agendas in your hand, you just put them here, and you just have that. So I prefer having my end the runs there, which means I put Vampire Renasa in front of R&D, and I put Boto in front of HQ. So it's going to be Petty Cash into Archives, so that I can Boto here and Vampire Renasa here. Now, Petty Cash is my least favorite of, like, my events that create money, but it's fine, and it'll make it so that I've got $7 so that I can res either Vampire Renasa or the Boto afterwards. So that's exactly what I do. This is a Vampire Renasa, and this is a Boto. And they immediately play Raindrops Cutstone, which is really interesting because Raindrops Cutstone gets a +1 card draw for every single time a subroutine fires. And Vampire Renasa has 4 subroutines, which is, like, maybe one of the highest amount of subroutines that a thing can have next to, like, Envelopment or something, right? Especially a subroutine that doesn't say End the Run, which is kind of funny. Now, you can see that I already choose to res this, but I think it's worth criticizing if it's worth resing this. Because by resing this, what I'm really claiming is that for 7 credits, I believe that I am okay with them drawing 4 cards. Like, they get 4 cards, but they also lose 2 cards in hand. They lose 2 credits, and then I gain +2 cards, and I gain 2 credits. And so, you know, you can minus these from each side and say this is 5 credits. You can say that minus these and say they only get 2 cards. And then, like, you know, are we saying is 5 credits worth it so that they lose 2 credits? Which is maybe arguably the same as saying it's only 3 credits to res, to draw 2 cards? And, like, maybe. I don't know. There's... I mean, we're both drawing 2 cards by the end of this. Now, I like drawing cards. I think being able to draw cards without having to do the click to draw action, especially when I'm at 5 cards in hand, makes me feel really great. Like, I get to fill these 2 cards so I can go up to 5, which means if they want to run this, they're less likely to hit the sender message, right? Right now, they can run this for free. I'm never able to run this unless this is a Tattoo Bowler, right? Like, that's 2 cents that the Vampire Renasa gets me. So unless this is the Tattoo Bowler, they just get to run HQ, and I'd rather have those 2 cards be random cards, especially because they've got a 1 in 3 chance of hitting my agenda, and they've got a 1 in 3 chance of hitting my Spin Doctor, which is... it's not as bad. Like, it's literally not as bad, but it's nearly as bad. So I'm very happy resing this. The other thing is that, like, okay, they lose 2 cards and they go up to, like, 6 cards in hand. That almost certainly means that they're going to want to install for 2 of their clicks. At least install once so that they're down to 5 cards. Or play a run event or something, right? But that means they're not going to just flatly run, which possibly means they're less likely to continue rerunning me. So I'm happy with resing the Vampire Renasa. It gives me my 2 credits back, which is useful, right? It means next turn I can click for credit so that the turn after I can use the Petty Cash if I want to. I'm pretty happy with resing Vampire Renasa, but If it was just a regular run, I think it's a slam dunk res Vampire run answer, right? But because it's a Raindrops run, there's really weird questions about the fact that we're giving them 4 card draw. This is like the Raindrops best circumstance, yet I still like Vampire run answer for this. And I say it's Raindrops best circumstance. Raindrops best circumstance is probably more likely a Tattoo Bowler, right? It ends the run and still lets them draw a card. While here, we're costing them 2 credits. We're costing them 2 cards in hand that they might want these cards. We don't know. We don't know what cards they want. And a couple other things like that. But, let me put my Boto back. Oh, I guess I don't need to have Vampire on answer there. Boto is here. So, we draw a Regenesis and a Kakarembo. This means that the only thing we need for our combo is Plutus, right? We've got a Petty Cash here, we've got this, and we've got our Kakarembo. All we need is a Plutus, which is interesting. It means that we can probably, like, wait and seek for it and sort of be a bit more passive and trying to wait for it. But it also means that, like, you know, push comes to shove, we can just Regenesis them, right? We can overdraw, put our Send a Message here and Regenesis them. So they're the sort of things that I'm thinking about at this moment. And we still have Spin Doctor to possibly search for a Plutus, like we have Click Efficient looking. And push comes to shove, if we do we have our 3-5 in here and a Spin Doctor on table? If they run this, I think it's called a 5-3. I think that's the convention for discussing agendas. We can always just put it in RD. So they draw up. I wonder why I said the number that I said. I thought they would be at 6 cards. What am I missing here? Ah, we hit a Steel Skin. Sorry, with this, yeah, Subroutine's already fired. We hit a Steel Skin, so they actually drew 2 more cards. So now looking at this, they're at 8 cards. Our HQ is safe. It is so unlikely to me that they're not going to play a card, play a card, play a card, right? Like, that's just the same thing for them to do. Now, they could, I don't know if they've got a clean getaway, maybe. They might run this, or like a Transfer of Wealth. I don't think ASO runs Transfer of Wealth. If you're going to run Transfer of Wealth, you may as well be a Seb deck. But, yeah. So they play Ghost Tongue. Makes sense. They trash their Hannah with Ghost Tongue, which is probably pretty good for us. I think Hannah is like a pretty nice card for them to have consistently. For clarification, Ghost Tongue is a 2-credit hardware that says each event they play costs 1 less, but they take a core damage. Obviously, with the core damage, that means we trash 2 cards. That includes a Hansai review and something else. I do wonder. I'd probably go back and check what it is at some point. They spend a lot of time thinking. We trash a... I think it's an Atini. We trash an Atini and a Hansai review, which is fine. I don't mind trashing an Atini and a Hansai review. And then they check immediately. They're like, well, it could be an agenda, which is fair. It very easily could be an agenda. Out of 36 cards, there are only 6 agendas in there, because we have 2 in hand. So that's what? 1 and 6? Twice? Decent chance it was an agenda. This math seems wrong to me. But I think it's right. Like, I trashed 2 cards. There are 6 agendas in 36. Yeah, they had about a 2 in 6 chance of getting agendas there. But there wasn't any, so sucks to suck. Click 1, well, first off, we mandatory draw into a Saisentan, which is fine. I think Saisentan's a sort of thing that can be quite nice into them. So we're thinking that because they are a core damage deck, but they're going to core damage themselves a lot, unless they have Marrow, instead of having like a 5 normal hand size, they might have something like a 3, or a 2, or a 4, or a 1. So net damage as a subroutine is a little bit more threatening, right? So this 2 net damage can be more threatening because it's half their health rather than 2/5 of their health. Right, same with Boto, same with Saisentan. Now, I'm not on an enemy in this list anymore, because it wasn't supposed to be like a kill damage focus deck, but the pressure that 2 net damage does consistently can feel quite good. It's just worth bringing this up, especially when we draw Saisentan, which is one of the few ways we can do more than 2 or 3 damage, right? Empiricist also does 3 damage, but yeah. First click Spin Doctor. I think I'm at the point where I'm expecting them to do more self-core damage, which means I want to be able to cycle things back. Hansai Review is a card I'd actually want back into my deck, so I'm also happy to see Hansai Review. And I wanted to draw more cards, right? If we draw a Plutus and an Ice, it means we can just Ice this, Plutus this, and possibly just do the combo in like the next turn, right? Other good thing about Spin Doctor is that if we click to draw, we will have 8 out of 5 cards, which means we play 1, go down to 7, and then we get to trash 2. And trashing 2 means that we get to do our agenda thing, right? We get to get a buck every turn. I said agenda, I meant ID thing, which is nice, right? Getting a buck every turn, asking them to run archives can be a beneficial play for us. So there's a lot of things that the Spin Doctor does for us. At the time, I don't think I know what I'm doing with this. I think I know that I want to be getting the 1 credit every turn, which means I'm either drawing or gaining a credit at least once during this turn, so that I can be forced to trash down and thus being overdrawn. But what to do with the rest of it, I'm not entirely certain. I think it's probably ice in front of this, so that I can present to them as if I want to protect my archives. Now, at some point, I will want to have my archives protected, and they are an anarch, so they often do get things benefiting from them by running archives. And we just saw a clean getaway, which means they might also want to run archives for, like, getting free money reasons. And they're NASA, so they're going to be running archives a little bit. So I think this is like a good opportunity to just ice the archives, click for a credit so that you get the drip feed buck every turn, and put something in front of archives. So I think that's exactly what I do. I click for credit twice instead of installing, which is kind of interesting. I think that's fine. Clicking for credit twice means that if we top deck a Hansai review, we're able to play it immediately. And if they are going to run the Spin Doctor and force us to use it, or not force us to use it, but we're implored to use it, we're probably putting the Hansai review back into the deck. So then there'll be like another 3 in 33 chance that we draw a Hansai review, and that's not a bad chance. Especially if we're going to click to draw as well, then that's like a 2 in 33-ish, becomes 1 in 33, 1 in 32, but yeah. So I don't mind double clicking for credit, but it does mean that our archives aren't protected, and if they're going to do sabotage, like they're going to core damage to sabotage, that means our archives are undefended. I put in the Hollow Man and the Empiricist. Empiricist is like a decent ice, but we're on 3 copies of Empiricist, and I don't mind just waiting to draw my big ice later on. I'm keeping Saisentan because, again, they are a deck where net damage is a little bit more relevant than most decks, and we are low on money, so Saisentan is the sort of ice that, like, you know, if we draw Plutus, that's the sort of ice I'd want to put in front of the Plutus because I can at least res it and punish them for running the Plutus if we end up drawing it. And I get rid of the Hollow Man because Hollow Man is like, it's just like a side win con. It's like fine to have, but it's far from where my mind is at most of the time. Click 1, they draw. Click 2, they run Spin Doctor. And I'm pretty certain I want to use the Spin Doctor in order to put stuff back in my deck. So I put back in a Hansai review and the Hollow Man. There's nothing else I want in my deck more than the Hollow Man. So the Hollow Man is just fine. And it's the perfect card to draw as like our 15th next draw to possibly just randomly win the game if they're in like a difficult position. They then put a Botulus on a Vampironasa, which is a pretty good card to put a Botulus on. They probably are wanting to run R&D in a little bit of future, so it makes sense for them to do that. And they played the Mayfly in order to get into any server they want to. Good aggressive plays by them. I think this is like a very ideal turn. They got rid of my Spin Doctor, which means they can continue doing their fun sabotage stuff. And they have set themselves up to be able to run ice in the future, which makes me worried because I don't necessarily have the ability to protect everything that's really important to me. Click 1, well, first mandatory draw into Adrian. Then, you know, I'm looking at this hand. There's nothing I really want to play. I can play the Spin Doctor. I can play the Saisentan. I could even, like, put, like, a Saisentan here and a Regenesis here and then try and, like, hope in a couple of turns I can put the 5-3 here, but that's not easy to do unless I do the Spin Doctor. But I also want money, and so clicking to draw with a fair couple of cards in here that can get me money. We've got the 3 Hansai reviews, we've got our hedge fund, and we've got our cohorts. That's 7 cards that we could easily be wanting to look for. So I don't mind clicking to draw. I think that's just fair. I think that's a fine play. Typically, I click to draw every turn, and so it's fine to do that. And we draw a Hansai review, which is great. So now we're thinking we're Hansai reviewing plus installing a card, and with the money we're going to get, we can very easily install an ice here. So I'm pretty sure I just do Hansai review plus Saisentan. So a Hansai review, trash the Adrian. Again, I don't need the Adrian. It's a cute, fun card to have just in case, but I don't need it. I'd much rather have these 3 cards so that we can make a Plutus work, and this card because Spin Doctor is insane. So, and Saisentan because I'm putting that in front of Archives. And by icing in front of Archives, I think this presents to them that I might have put an agenda in here, right? Like if this is an end the run ice, decent chance I put an agenda in here so that HQ is safer. At least that's what I imagine they're thinking. I'm not entirely certain, but that's what I imagine they're thinking. Click 1, they draw. Click 2, they do Finality, which is the card I was talking about earlier, where they get to see 4 cards. And because they have put 2 power counters on this, it's much easier for them to do a ton of good stuff. Like to get through this without feeling as punished. Obviously, as part of finality, this says, I should explain it just in case. It's a 2-cost event that says take a core damage in order to see 3 extra cards when you run R&D. You're forced to run R&D with it. So now they're down to 3 cards in hand. Now they get to see 4 cards because it's +3, which is, they can win off this, right? But I am a deck with Fuji. So I am currently, this is one of the changes I have been testing, by the way, if I should be on 3 Fuji or 3 Sender Message. I said last time that I was like really keen on Sender Message, but I've been fighting a lot more Anarchs, and I've actually been feeling a lot more interested in being able to threaten 2 Fujis in here when they have nothing scored, and trying to have that as like a win con, especially if I'm going to be doing like Saisentan in front of archived plays, by the way. We should make sure that we know that this is a Saisentan. Okay, so they took a core damage, which meant we had to sabotage 2. We lost a cohort, and I'll see if I hover over it. I do for maybe like half a second. Sorry, I want to make sure we both, everyone knows. We lost Plutus. This is actually relatively important. We did lose Plutus as part of this. This changes where my mind is at. Now there's only 1 Plutus left in the deck, which means I might just have to do the Regenesis combo as a Regenesis combo, or I want to install Spin Doctor so that I can shuffle the Plutus back in. It's actually quite big news that I lost this Plutus here, so I think it's worth keeping that in mind. So they break where I gain $2. Sorry. They lose $2 and they take 2 damage. Very good idea to prevent the take 2 damage, right? In case they see a double Fuji, or they might not even know I'm a Fuji deck. They might think I'm a Sting deck. So if I'm a Sting deck, that's also damage they want to prevent. Or like Bite or something. But I get to draw 2 cards, which feels lovely. I love drawing 2 cards. And we get 2 pieces of ice that are pretty good, right? This is the exact sort of thing where I'd love to ice and put a Regenesis in. Like if we mandatory draw, we go to 7 out of 5. We click to draw, we go to 8 out of 5. Then we install. We're at 6 out of 5, so we're forced to discard 1. Perfect opportunity to do a sneaky Regenesis plus a 5/3 where they might not be expecting it. They might think, oh, well, she overdrew because her hand is awkward, but maybe not awkward enough to be like agenda Regenesis seeking. So there's that. Okay, so they see 4 cards. They see an unknown, an unknown, an unknown, and a Fuji. So they obviously do the Fuji. They lost a Mayfly and an Eye for an Eye, which means -1 Mayfly is really nice to see. They only have 1 more left in the deck, and the one they have on the field. And they've still got 2 clicks left. Click to draw, and they're thinking now with their only 3 hand size, what are they going to do for their last click? They can install a card, go down to 2 cards. That's probably not too risky for them, but that's not a great feeling. And so they gain a credit. That's probably fine. Based on what their hand is, that might be a really important decision to make. I think I do, and this is because I've already watched this, so I kind of know what I'm going to be doing. I do exactly the play I say. I click to draw after mandatory drawing, and I think about, well, if my Plutus is gone, and they are lowish on money, such that they may not feel comfortable just assuming their Mayfly lets them get into anything, pretty decent time to put ice, a Regenesis, and a thing in there. So that's exactly what I do. The ice I put in is an Empiricist. This is something that does 3 damage, so it's enough to sort of make them worried, and they need to have all cards in hand in order to break through, or some copies of Steel Skin or something like that. So happy to do that. Sorry, let me stop circling things so we can see that this is an Empiricist. And we trash our Sender Message, end of turn. Wait. I straight up lied to you. We don't install our Sender Message. I remember this, because I was like, this is my plan. I'm going to install a Sender Message. Then I see, oh, I have to discard a card. Whoopsie daisies. Oh, bloody... Sorry. This is another complaint I have. My camera, which is... I'm glad I got this camera, but the camera is AI... tracking. But what is irritating is that I tell it, don't look at my hand gestures in order to decide what to do. Do you know what it does? It looks at my hand gestures to decide what to do. I don't want it to look at my hand gestures to decide what to do. And yet it does. So let me fix this so you're not seeing like behind the green screen to just my house. That's good enough. If I do this, it'll... if I do this and I haven't told it to stop looking at me, it'll think it's gesturing. It thinks it's a really cool camera, but it doesn't know that I don't want this. After that digression, I don't know how long this has been there for. Nonetheless, after that digression, I was definitely talking about something. I knew in the spot that I wanted to trash this, but I was at the end of the turn, and I'm like, oh, I'm at the end of the turn. Fantastic. This is an opportunity to get rid of my petty cash, because I don't want my petty cash, but I completely forgot that this was my goal. Now, there are benefits to this. If they're thinking this is a Regenesis, they might be thinking, whoa, they could just run this and then prevent my Regenesis from working. That'd be a cool, interesting play. But so that's why I wouldn't put the agenda in here. The next time I put the agenda in here, now, like, oh, well, you know, they might be thinking in that sort of way. But I misplayed. I'm straight up, that's just a misplay. I didn't mean to do that. They raindrops Cutstone the Boto. I'm definitely willing to raise the Boto here. Do 2 net damage. I know they draw cards, but do 2 net damage after they draw 2 cards, or before they draw 2 cards, and prevent them from entering. Absolutely. And this gives me the opportunity to trash it. Yes! Thank you for letting me trash a card. This happens quite frequently, that I get to trash a card because they let me on their turn. So this often happens with Anoetic, obviously. Anoetic is like the main culprit. But there are many instances with Boto where this happens. I think there's one more card that lets me do this, but I don't recall what it is. Well, I don't remember. So I'm pretty sure it's Boto. It might just be Boto and Anoetic, and that's all I'm thinking. But we get to make up for the misplay. Now, I should acknowledge, right? This is a VOD review. Do I make misplays? Yes. And the misplay would obviously be getting rid of the petty cash there. I could just get rid of the petty cash during the HQ bit. Now, there are arguments. If I, for some reason, have a premonition that they're going to run HQ, for example, if they, like, had an alarm clock or something, like they installed last turn, then there's a... alarm clock's a really bad example because they're forced to run it first click. But there's worlds in which they, like, run archives and then run HQ. And if they do that, then there are worlds where I don't want this in here until after they run HQ, but that wasn't... I don't think this is going to happen in this world. Their last 2 clicks are Strike Fund and Gain a Credit. Perfectly reasonable. But, I mean, we have Regenesis send a message on the table, so we just do Regenesis send a message, right? They said, damn, figured the cohort, which is interesting. I want to claim to you that this is really interesting, because they should know that I didn't have access to cohort. They saw 1 card, 1 card, 1 card Fuji. We mandatory drew, click to drew. This card must have been our cohort, because it wasn't any of these cards. So, look, they could have assumed that I already had a cohort, and this was like my second cohort. But when they say figured the cohort, that to me implies that it was the cohort they'd already seen, and I just didn't have access to this cohort. So I think they might have just forgotten which order they saw cards in. Oh, by the way, we already know there's a Boto there, so I don't need to write that. This is Saisentan, and this is Empiricist. Okay, click 1, they Begemot. Now they are at 2 cards in hand. 2 cards full. Begemot is a thing that says take a core damage, but I just break barriers just like anything. Now, they took another core damage. I chose to trash 2 cards into archives again. It was a Spin Doctor and a Cohort. And they clean getaway with 3 cards in hand into my Saisentan. I raise Saisentan. I choose Event. So, I want to explain my logic for Saisentan Event. My understanding of Acer decks is that they are going to be something along the lines of 20 events. Hit you with like a 9 hardware. I'll hit you with like a 7 program. And I'll hit you with like a 9 resource. But what these are, I don't know. Like, these are obviously going to be things like the Clean Getaway, the... Running Hot, and Finality, and Sure Gambles, and Strike Funds, and importantly, Steel Skin Scarring, right? Like, one of the benefits to picking this is that if they have Steel Skin Scarring, I get to hit the things after the Steel Skin Scarring as well. Like, that's one of the few ways they can have more than 3/4 health, right? It's kind of 4 health, because I need to do the 4th damage. That's why I pick Events, partly because I think Acer decks are high on events. I think for most opponents, I pick event. There are very few opponents I pick event, but I think I need to be more comfortable with not picking event. For example, I think there are lots of opponents where program is the better choice. They're not just shapers. I'm thinking opponents that have like banner might have a second banner in hand. They're just waiting to get rid of, but this means I get to hit that and something else. I also probably need to hit resource more. But anyway, I hit event. Now, if they have any event in hand, I win as long as they don't have a steel skin. If they have any, well, if they have, of all the things I could have chosen, if they have any X and they don't have a steel skin in hand, I just win, where X is the thing I choose from Sice and Ton. It was event, I win the game. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they had, but event wins me the game. They had an arrow at some point. But, yep, I win. Now, they didn't draw a Marrow, and we have a little discussion about this. I think, like, Marrow is really important if they're going to be fighting ice that where, like, this ice says 2 damage, this ice says 2 damage, this ice says 2 damage, this ice says 2 damage. Well, this one actually says 3+, and this one says 3. But that's what's going to happen with ice. Overall, I think I played this game fine. I think, realistically, this was not my game as much as it was, like, my game to win, as much as it was their game to lose. Like, I think they lost the game rather than me winning the game. But I don't think they lost the game because they played too badly, right? They say they could have waited, which is true. They could have waited. But look, what are they going to do? Click to draw for Marrow for like 3 turns in a row? That's their only real way to get through Sice and Talon, unless they're waiting to get their 3rd Mayfly, because they already trashed a Mayfly. So I'm not too certain. I don't know. I don't think they're going to be on many other icebreakers. I don't know if they're on a Century icebreaker. I think by doing their Regenesis combo, well, not the Regenesis, yeah, I mean, just doing a Regenesis combo. It's not the Plutus combo, just a Regenesis combo. I put them on a lot of pressure. Right now, any 5-3 plus Anoetic wins me the game. Any 5-3 plus Hollow Man plus like an End the Run thing wins me the game. Any, I don't know. Drawing a Plutus would probably win me the game pretty soon. I'd obviously need to draw the Regenesis and a 5-3, but that's not going to be too hard to do. And I've got a really good hand, right? Like, I've got Cohort. I can start doing Cohort stuff. I'm in a really, really, really good position. And they lost a lot of cards they would have wanted to have. Could they have played better by running maybe this when they didn't know what it was and they assumed it was the Cohort? Maybe, but they're still taking 3 net damage and getting tagged. Like, this is probably a good matchup for me, if I'm being really realistic about it, especially if they don't draw Marrow. Because they don't get through my ice. I've got big ice, and I'm sort of like a thin agenda deck, right? I'm not on any 2/3s. I've only got 8 agendas. So because I can easily interact with my agendas with my spin doctors, they're not likely to get sabotaged to feel particularly good for them. And obviously, I can do net damage, and they don't have good icebreakers. But look, I think I don't know if there was much difference I wanted to do for this game, right? If I'm going through all the turns, I think the most interesting turns was Rezzing Vampire and Arso, right? I stick with it. I think me drawing 2 cards is just a wonderful feeling, but there's arguments that I shouldn't have raised Vampire and Arso when they had a thing there. I think arguably, I mean, not putting this in archives was just a bad decision when I put the Petty Cache in. I was lucky they ran the Boto. If they didn't run the Boto, the game would have been entirely different, right? And that's all. At least from my side, I think I'm very happy with how I played. There are minor issues here, but there wasn't like a, you know, I hung a rook on move 6 or whatever the phrase is. Yeah, I'm happy with this. And that's all I wanted to say, because this is a relatively short game. The next game is much longer. But, yep, that's all I suppose. Bye!